Let's face it, guys, the 2024 summer transfer window has been pretty boring.
Let's know what you thought about the transfer window in general, actually, because I think, really, bar a few clubs, it was a little bit flat.
The 2024 summer transfer window has been very boring. In actual fact, quite a lot of people are saying it.
If you see this, I have no idea how you can call this a boring transfer window for the Premier League teams. Chelsea has brought in a boatload of players. Did they win the transfer market? City did not buy any player. They just bought a couple. Did they win the transfer market? Or did any of the teams who have sort of like gotten promoted this year have won the transfer market? Like, who is it? Who has won the transfer market in the Premier League 24-25 season? Hello everybody and welcome to Streamatrix. My name is Neil and you are back watching your future favorite football channel where we discuss everything football, including Manchester United, the Premier League, EAFC, and anything that you can think of under the football umbrella. There has been a lot of chatter about the transfer market this season, and there has been a lot of YouTubers, a lot of creators. There's been a lot of buzz on the social media that this has been such a boring transfer market. There's been not much activity. And so I thought, why not dive a bit more deeper into the transfer market activity, see how the teams actually fared, what kind of business they have done, and which team has actually won the transfer market. I mean, Chelsea has brought in a boatload of players. Did they win the transfer market? City did not buy any player. They just bought a couple. Did they win the transfer market? Or did any of the relegation teams, the teams who have sort of like gotten promoted this year, have won the transfer market? Like, who is it? Who has won the transfer market in the Premier League 24-25 season? We are here to answer that question, and hopefully by the end of this video we will be able to dive deeper into it and get our answers. That being said, why don't we just dive into the transfer market discussion? Right then, this is the transfers ranking by our channel, Streamatrix. The content over here that I'm about to discuss, I tried to be as transparent as possible. I tried to be as fair as possible. I tried to be as level-handed as possible, keeping my bias aside. I have come up with a particular approach. Hopefully that approach you guys agree with as well when you see this. And if you have any thoughts about it, feel free to comment down below. Let's dive into how we are going to do our transfers ranking in this particular stream. So every team will be ranked on these 5 parameters. First is need versus want, which is how many players do the team actually need and how many players did they end up getting. And we will be giving ratings out of 5 for all of these individual categories. Next is value for money, comparing the total market value of these players and what amount they have actually paid to bring them. The third category will be at the average age. The ideal average age that we will be considering for this video will be between 23 to 24 years of age, because that shows a mix of balance between experience and youngsters. Now the next category will be net spend. Net spend is basically the overall spend that has been done by that particular team, deducted from the amount of income they have generated by player transfer. Ideal value should be in negative, which is you have more income than expense. The final area of transfer ratings will be SofaScore rating. So what we are going to consider is that what was their SofaScore rating as a team in the season before, which is 23-24, and what is their rating now after 4 game weeks. Because if their transfers have had a good impact, then the SofaScore rating will improve. So combined value of all these 5 factors, which we will be rating individually out of 5, we will get the total rating out of 5. Once we get the total rating out of 5, only then we will go them and place them in the tier maker. Now in the tier maker, you will see that there are 4 categories: excellent transfer window, good transfer window, average transfer window, and a bad transfer window. Now depending on the total rating of all of these teams that we are going to be working on, they will fall into either of these categories. And towards the end, I will also give you guys transfer ranking from 1 to 20 based on all of these rankings and a few other factors which we're going to discuss later. If you want to know which team won the transfer window, stick around for the video. And if you're excited to see this kind of a transfer rating, which is a bit different than what exists in the market right now, feel free to share this video, drop a like and subscribe. Let's move on. to our first team that we're going to discuss the transfers about, and that is going to be Arsenal. Now, I don't think Arsenal needed too many players coming in because I don't think they have sold in very integral part of their players who were integral part of their team. But I also feel they have not done what was expected of them, and I'm going to cover that in the next upcoming few minutes while we discuss about Arsenal. So the primary incomings for Arsenal were Calafiori, Mikel Merino, and Raheem Sterling. Raheem Sterling, of course, on loan from Chelsea, and also additionally, David Raya, their goalkeeper, was on loan last season, so his loan got converted into the permanent transfer this season. Now, their primary outgoings this season are Emil Smith-Rowe to Fulham, Nketiah to, I think, Crystal Palace, and Ramsdale to Southampton. I do feel that letting Nketiah go sort of like takes away from their striker depth. Now let's look at their 24-25 team, which is this is their full squad basically. Now as you can see, they have covered their ground in a lot of positions. However, the one spot where I feel they have less depth is that apart from Gabriel Jesus, they don't have a number 9 backup. I know Havertz is playing up front, and I know that's his role right now, but having a striker, out and out striker up front, I think would increase their chances to be able to compete for the title. Also, considering Zinchenko has not been very proactive, if they were able to bring in a young fullback, I think that would have also been a good addition for Arsenal. Let's discuss about their needs and wants. So their expense has been 108.9 million euros, and their income has been only 83.8 million euros approximately. So their net spend is 25.11 million euros. I don't think that's a huge amount that they've gone overboard with, so that's okay. But the needs versus want, as I have pointed out here, striker, I thought that they could have added a striker to their squad, and that would have made them absolutely like a complete title contender this season. And this is my transfer rating for Arsenal. So the need versus want, in my opinion, they needed 5 players, they've added 3 players, so they got an average rating of 3. For value for money, the market value of all of these signings that Arsenal have done this season is 167.5 million euros, and they have signed them all for 108.9 million euros, which is terrific business, and they've got a 5-on-5 rating on this particular category. The average age of the players that Arsenal have brought in is where they're a bit lacking. The average age of players that they have brought in this season is 28.4 years. It's not bad, it's just average. So that's why they've gotten a rating of 3 out of 5 on this one. The net spend, they are again 25.11 million net spend. That's absolutely fine for Arsenal. So they've gotten a 4 out of 5. The SofaScore impact. The previous year, so the SofaScore rating for Arsenal's team was 7.15, and this year's SofaScore rating is 7.08. That is where the rating lies, based on the ratings that I've given to the other teams as well. So the overall rating for Arsenal is 3.6. Now let's see where Arsenal lies in the tier maker list. So they will land comfortably in the average transfer window position. All right, so the next team is Aston Villa. Right. So Aston Villa had started their transfer activity much earlier in the window, and what they had done overall, I was very impressed by them initially. Firstly, we are going to discuss about their incomings. So they had Amadou Onana coming in from Everton, they had Ian Maatsen coming in the left back position, and also Ross Barkley from Luton coming in on central midfield. Additionally, 3 more wingers and another midfielder were added, but they were all very young, 18 to 19 years of age, and they have all left on loan. Their primary outgoings include Moussa Diaby. This was a shocker, but they raised real good amount from this particular sale of Diaby. I think he went to Al Ittihad. And then there is Douglas Luiz, who was sent to Juventus, and in return they had done some cash plus players business as well. And Cameron Archer also left Aston Villa. So let's look at their 24-25 team. And this is Villa's team for 24-25. I feel that defenders wise they are fine. Having 1 or 2 other midfielders would have been great as well, and maybe adding 1 more forward should have been ideal. So the transfer highlights for the team include they have spent a total of 176.2 million euros. That's 31.2 million net spend, because they have brought in an income of 145 million euros. And in comparison to the transfer needs versus actuals, they've fared well. I just think there are a couple of players short. So yeah, that has been the transfer highlights. Now let's look at the transfer ratings for Aston Villa. Right. So their ratings include, so without players loaned out, they needed 7 players. They brought in 6. So that's a good business. I give them a rating of 4.5 out of 5. Value for money, the total market value of the signings they have done are 149 million, but they have spent 176.2 million to get them. So they have spent more than their market value. Hence, they've gotten a rating of an average 3.5. The average age of the player arrivals is 22.8, which is great, just roundabout near 23. So they've gotten a 5-star rating there, 5 out of 5 basically. Their net spend is 31.2 million, which Villa can afford. So yeah, they've gotten a rating of 4 out of 5. And their SOFA score impact. Last season, their SOFA score was 6.94, and this season, right now, it's 6.88. So they have actually reduced their SOFA score ratings, hence they've gotten a 3. So their overall transfer rating is 4, and let's see where that lands them. So with a rating of 4, Villa ranks high up in the good window. Now let's go back to our transfers. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. The next team is Bournemouth, and again, Bournemouth actually surprised me in the transfer window. So let's quickly look at their incomings that they have brought in this season. Ivan Nilsson as their centre forward. They have brought in Sinisterra from Leeds as their left winger, and they've also brought in Kepa as their goalkeeper from Chelsea. And I think that's good business for Bournemouth. This kind of helps them solidify their position in the mid-pack, in the lower mid-pack as well. Their main outgoing has been Dominic Solanke to Spurs, and they have raised good money from that particular transfer. So their 24-25 team consists of all of these players, and as you can see, they're stacked in their midfield and their defense positions. They've also brought in 2 forwards instead of Solanke. They've also had Kepa as their goalkeeper. I think Bournemouth have done really well in structuring this team this season. Now let's look at the transfer highlights. So as I was saying, so they have spent their net spend is 38 million approximately. So I do think that this is good business by them. So the total expense, the total amount of money that they spent to bring in all these players is almost 109 million, and their income has been about 66 million. And as you can see in the needs versus actuals comparisons, they've already brought in more players than what they might have needed. So their transfer ratings include their need versus want. They needed 5 according to me, and they brought in 8, and with equal depth all across. So that's a 5 out of 5 rating. The value for money, the market value of their signings is 101 million, and they have signed them for 104, and that is amazing business. So they've got a rating of 4.5. The average age of the players that have brought in is 23.5, which is right in the money. So that's another rating of 4.5 out of 5. Their net spend is 38.2 million, 38.3 million. It's an average 3.5 rating. And their SOFA score impact. Last year, their SOFA score was 6.86 for the entire season. And right now, their SOFA score is 6.89 after 4 game weeks. And that is amazing impact by the transfers that they have made. And so they've gotten a rating of 4. So overall, they have amassed a beautiful overall rating of 4.3. Now this, I think, will land them in the excellent transfer window. So we have gotten our first team this season in the transfer market who have landed in the excellent transfer window position, and that goes to Bournemouth. Now the next team that we're going to discuss, whose transfers we are going to discuss, is going to be Brentford. I do think that their outgoings have not sort of matched their incomings, but let's see. We will discuss about that in the upcoming few minutes. So their primary incomings have been Igor Thiago as a centre forward. Sepp van der Berg from Liverpool have joined as a centre back, and also Fabio Carvalho from Liverpool has also joined as an attacking midfielder option. And additionally, they've also added a young winger, Gustavo Nunes, to their squad depth. Their primary outgoings have been Ivan Toney, of course, who has gone to Saudi, and also they got in the money for David Raya this season. So all in all, they've had a good income this season as well. So let's look at their overall team depth and look at that squad depth. Like, that is absolutely covers every single ground for Brentford. And no doubt they have backed Thomas Frank this transfer window. The only place where I feel they could have added one more player is maybe in the defense position. considering the kind of depth they have. A couple of injuries will really set them aback. They are stacked in the midfield and the forward positions. So let's look at their transfer highlights next. And their transfer highlights, they have had a net spend of 23.4 million euros, and I think that is absolutely fine. So their overall expense has been 97.9 million and their income have been 74.5 million. So that's absolutely great business. Now in their needs versus wants, as I was saying, instead of a midfielder or a forward, if they would have added a defender, they would have really covered all their positions really well. So let's look at their transfer ratings as per our criterias. And in the need versus want, they needed 4, they got 4. Maybe they could have added a defender, but that's absolutely fine. So they've gotten a 5 out of 5 rating. Value for money, the market value of the players that they have signed is 61 million, but they have paid 97.9 million for them. So there they have lost out a bit on this particular ratings. They've gotten a 3 out of 5 rating on this one. The average age of all of these players is 20.4, so that's a really young focus on the youngsters. So they've gotten an average 3 out of 5 rating. The net spend there has been 23.4 million as we discussed. Again, that's pretty much okay for Brentford. So their rating is 3.5, and their SOFA score impact. Previous year, their SOFA score for the team was 6.89, and this year there's already improved it to 6.95 in just 4 game weeks. That's absolutely great impact that their transfers are having right now, and so they have gotten a rating of 4.5 out of 5, which brings their overall score to 3.8. Now let's see where that ranks them. So 3.8 will land them in the good transfer window. And yeah, they've had a good transfer window. Let's move on to the next team. That's going to be Brighton. All right. So Brighton's transfer window, when I discuss about their transfers, it's very unlike Brighton. You will see what I mean by that. Firstly, their incomings, Brighton's incomings, Jorginho as a centre forward, Yankuba Minte as a right winger, again a great talent that they've signed, Matt Swifer as a defensive midfield. They've also had more incomings, so Brighton have actually spent a lot. And that includes Brian Gruda, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it in the right way, as a right winger, Kat Dioglu as their left back, and Matt O'Reilly as their central midfield option. So as you can see, overall Brighton has had a lot of signings come in this season. We will discuss about what their squad depth is, because it's absolutely ridiculous the amount of signings that Brighton have done this season. But let's see about their outgoings first. So Brighton's outgoings have been Undaf. He was wanting to go for a long time. He's finally made his move. Billy Gilmore as well has left the club along with Pascal Gross. Let's discuss about the squad depth of Brighton first. Now, if you look at the overall 24-25 team for Brighton, their squad depth is absolutely insane. Look at the amount of forwards that they're playing with. But like overall, I think they've had too many players added in their squad this season. And I don't know if that was their strategy that going in. They already had Evan Ferguson, they already had Welbeck, and they already had João Pedro. So these 3 complete their striking position. So for them to add another couple of forwards this season, I don't think really made much sense. But let's move on to their transfer highlights, especially. So if you look at the net spend of Brighton, it's 183 million net spend, wherein they have a total expense of 231.2 million euros, and their income has only been 48.3 million, which is about 48 million euros. And that's absolutely insane amount of money spent by Brighton. Brighton, in the past years, have been this club who have brought in very young talent for about 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, and then they have sold them for 100 million. And that's the kind of club that they've been. But for them to pay this exorbitant of an amount, I don't know about where their strategy lied. Their manager is doing really well, 31 years of age, having a very good impact. They're performing well this season as well, and I hope that their transfers don't have a negative impact. But in my personal opinion, the squad is a bit bloated than what it needed to be for Brighton. Now let's look at their transfer ratings quickly. And their transfer ratings, their need versus want, they needed 6, they bought 6, but they bought too many forwards. Instead of that, if they would have added another midfield, that would have made more sense. So yeah, that is why they've gotten a rating of 4.5 out of 5, which is still good. The value for money section, if you look at this is absolutely insane. So the market value of the signings that they've brought in this season is 153 million euros. And they have signed them for a combined value of 231.2 million euros. That's so much more than these players' market value. So I have no idea what happened to Brighton's transfer strategy this season, but they've gotten a rating of 2.5 out of 5, which is again bad score. The average age of all of these players combined is 20.9, which is again on a very young side, but that's still fine. So that's 3 out of 5 rating. The net spend is 183 million, which is really bad for Brighton. I do not think they needed to spend, the net spend needed to be this high, but that ended up getting them a score of only 2 out of 5. And their SOFA score impact, which is good. Their last season SOFA score was 6.94 for the team, and this season their SOFA score so far has been 7.02, which has been an improvement, a good improvement, great improvement in fact, from 6.94 to 7.02. So they have gotten a rating of 5 out of 5. So the total rating of the transfers brings them to 3.4. Now, where does that land them in our transfer ranking tiers? So Brighton, with a score of 3.4, unfortunately will end up in a bad transfer window. These rankings are all in comparison to every team that's there, all the 20 teams. Do I feel this transfer window will have a negative impact on Brighton? I don't think so. In their overall score, I do think that they could have had an ideal score rating on our particular criteria if their net spend was not that high, and if the value for money was better. If these were sorted out, I think Brighton would have landed in the average, good, or even an excellent transfer window. And if you've made it for the first 4 teams, drop a like if you're watching this video. Would really appreciate that, because we've worked really long and hard for this particular video. All right, so let's move on to the next team, which is going to be Chelsea. And Chelsea's transfer activity has been really interesting. Just like Brighton, they have brought in a lot of players. But unlike Brighton, very surprisingly, their financial management was much better. And I do not know how. So let's take a quick look at that. Firstly, about their incomings, let's quickly take a look. So firstly, Pedro Neto from Wolves joined as their right winger. Joao Felix towards, I think this was a deadline day signing, or just about the deadline day signing. Then they have had Dewsbury Hall coming in as well in their midfield option. They've also added Philip Jorgensen as their goalkeeping option. Arabadio as a free transfer from Fulham, which was a good business as well. And also they've gotten in Jadon Sancho on loan from Manchester United. For their outgoings, I have to really say the way they managed Conor Gallagher's situation, I don't know. I just feel like it was Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah. They both were treated really bad by Chelsea because they just wanted to push them out so that they can generate money to comply with the PSR rules. But yeah, these were their primary outgoings. They had also confirmed Lukaku's departure, Hutchinson's departure, and Raheem Sterling left on loan as well in this video. Now the next is their 24-25 team. This does not look that bloated, but this has a very similar feels to the Brighton squad. So it is bloated to an extent, especially in the forward position. Then they have had a lot of midfielder depth, a lot of defender depth, goalkeeper depth as well, completely jam-packed. And Philip Jorgensen, I think, is going to be a star for the future, star goalkeeper for the future. So that's their 24-25 team. Now this is their net spend. It is 40.5 million euros. And this is exactly what I was talking about when I was discussing about Brighton before this. That the two factors where they lacked when they brought in so many players is their net spend, which was exorbitantly high, and the value for money aspect. And I think Chelsea has nailed their net spend. For Chelsea, 40.5 million net spend is absolutely insane business, considering the number of players that they have bought in. So their total expenses to 238.5 million euros, and their income is 198 million euros. So they have done great business. The need versus want also, they have filled in almost every position. I think instead of a forward, instead of Sancho, if they brought in a midfielder, I think that would have been absolutely on point for them. Now let's look at their transfer ratings. In their transfer ratings, so they needed 5, they brought in 8, they've gotten a need versus want score of 4 out of 5. Value for money, the market value of the signings was 204.5 million, and they have paid 238.5. It's not too bad, it's just average, so it's 3.5 out of 5 rating basically. The average age of their signings is 21.8 years, which is just about 22, nearing the 23 mark, so they have gotten an average rating of 3 out of 5. The net spend is 40.5 million euros, which is again absolutely amazing that they have pulled this off, and that is they've given them a rating of 4 out of 5. And their SofaScore impact, so their previous year's rating was 7.02, and this year's SofaScore is 7.01, which is not very different. So they've gotten an average rating out of 5, which is 3.5 for their SofaScore impact. So this brings their overall transfer rating to 3.6. And now let's see where that lands them in our tier list of transfers. So with a 3.6 rating, Chelsea has had an average transfer window 3.5 to 3.7. This is just a transfer window objectively rankings. That's it. And now let's move on to the next team on our list, Crystal Palace. Now, Crystal Palace again has had a few incomings coming in. Primarily, Nketiah has joined from Arsenal. Lacroix is a good centre back joining in for Crystal Palace, and also a good business in Ismail Assar. And also they have loaned in Trevor Chalobah from Chelsea and Matt Turner from Forest. So this has been the overall incomings for Crystal Palace, which is fairly good. Let's see about their outgoings. Firstly, again, Olise left to Bayern. Then they have Joachim Anderson leaving as well, along with Sam Johnstone. Also, Jordan Ayew left for a good enough amount. I think it was 7 or 8 million euros. So this brings their squad list for Crystal Palace to be such. And I think that this is good enough. Just that I feel there may be one or maybe two midfielders short. They are overly stacked in defense, overly stacked in forwards. I think just adding another midfielder would have really given them a solid competitive aspect for the 7th, 8th, 9th position in the Premier League season. So let's look at their transfer highlights. So they have had a positive net spend, which means that their expense, the total expense of all the transfer was 77 million, close to 78, and their income was 100 million, which means that they have had a positive net spend of 23 million euros, which is absolutely great considering Crystal Palace's financials as well. And in their transfer needs versus actuals, as you can see, they're okay in forwards and the defenders and the goalkeeper department, but instead of adding more defenders and goalkeepers, they could have easily added one more midfielder, and that would have given them a bit more midfield depth in the squad. And their transfer rating in the needs versus want, again, I've mentioned here, they are lacking a bit of a midfield depth. They needed 6, they have brought in 8, but majorly being defense and forward and goalkeepers, and they have left out the midfielder option. They have gotten a rating of 4 out of 5, which is fairly good. The value for money, the market value of the signings is 121 million euros, and their signing value is 77 million euros. They have signed them for lesser than their market value, and that's great business. So that has given them a rating of 5 out of 5. Their average age of the players that they've gotten in is 25. Like I said, 24 is the ideal age, which is near to that. So 3.5 is an average rating that they have received. Net spend is in the positive. Negative here means that they have more income than expense, and they've gotten a rating of 5 out of 5. And their SofaScore right now has not improved that much. Last year, their SofaScore rating was 6.94, and this year their SofaScore rating is 6.86, which has given them around about 3 out of 5 rating, which is fair, I feel. Average rating 3 out of 5. So the total rating of their transfers this season is 4.1, which I think means that we have landed another excellent team. Let's see, Crystal Palace with a rating of 4.1 have cleared the good, the average, the good, and now landed in the excellent transfer window ranking according to what their team needs. So this is absolutely great. Let's move on to the next team on this list, and that is going to be Everton. Considering the number of point deductions that they got last season, nobody expected them to be too much active this transfer window, and they could not be as well. They could not afford to be very active in this transfer window. So I do think that overall, considering their financial status, considering there were also talks about them getting a point deduction this season, they have done fairly well. So let's look at their primary incomings this season. And they are Jacob Bryan as their centre-back option, Iliman as their centre-forward option, and Tim as their central midfield option. Additional, they have also loaned in Armando Broja from Chelsea and Lindstrom as well. Their outgoings have been Amadou Onana to Aston Villa, Ben Godfrey and Lewis Dobbin. So their 24-25 team looks to be as such, and I think it's a decent enough team. They have good amount of depth in their forward position, defense position, but again they are lacking midfield depth. I have mixed feelings about this. I don't know what more Everton could have done, but considering their form, they are bottom of the league right now, and I do feel that they could have added another midfield option. Let's see about the transfer highlights. So they've had a positive net spend, which they had to have. They needed to have a positive net spend because they could not afford to go in negative. They had already breached PSR rules for 2 seasons, and they could not do that this season. So I think that was at least smart enough for them to not go overboard this season. So yeah, their transfer highlights include a positive net spend of 33.45 million, in which they had a total expense of 50 million, and their income was 84 million. So that's great. In their transfer needs versus actuals, they have done good. They've fared well. They've covered all positions, I think. So let's move on to the transfer ratings. Now, in the need versus want, like I mentioned, they're lacking a bit of a midfield depth. So need 5, bought 7, and their total rating that they've gotten is 4 out of 5, which is good. In the value for money, market value of all the signings was 95.3 million, but this also includes the loan option that they've brought in, and the signing value is 50.2 million, which is very less comparatively, but this also includes the market value of Armando Broja and all, who have come on loan. Yeah, that's again a 4 out of 5, a solid rating. The average age of the players brought in is 25.3, which is a tad bit over what I would have liked for them to have, but I do think they might need a bit more experience on the ground as well. So that's why they've gotten an average rating of 3 out of 5. Their net spend is in positive, so that's a 5 out of 5. And the SOFA score impact, the last year it was 6.95, and this year the SOFA score is 6.7. So they have actually reduced quite some bit because they're bottom of the table right now. So their transfers have not made immediate impact as well. That has given them a below average score of 2.5 out of 5. This brings their overall rating to 3.7. Let's see where they fare in the tier list. So with a 3.7, it's an average transfer window for them. So yeah, let's move on to our next team, which is going to be Fulham. Firstly, let's discuss their incomings. The incomings include Emil Smith-Rowe, which is in the attacking midfield option. They've gotten in Joachim Andersen as the centre-back option, Sander Berge as their midfield option, and also they have loaned in Reece Nelson. These are all their primary incomings this season. Their primary outgoings include João Palhinha. Palhinha to Bayern, I think, was a good deal for them, and Jay Stansfield as a centre-forward option. Additionally, Arabadio left on a free, and also Willian. And their team for the 24-25 season includes these players. I do feel that they are lacking a little bit on the goalkeeping option. They could have loaned in another keeper maybe, and they could have added another defender. And yeah, I think that would have sort of like sorted them out in depth wise. So yeah, the transfer highlights include their net spend of 22.75 million euros, which is fair. I don't think that's a bad net spend to have. Their overall expense was 92 million approximately, and their income was 69 million approximately. Yeah, I think they've had a good net spend. This is not a bad net spend to have. And like I was mentioning, a midfielder and a defender would have sort of like completed their squad depth. So yeah, that would have like given them a higher score on a need versus want. And talking about the higher score, let's look at their transfer ratings as well. The need versus want, I had mentioned here as well, lacking midfield and defensive depth. Their need would have been 8, and their need was 8, and they've brought in 6, and they've gotten an average rating of 3.5 out of 5. Their value for money, the market value of all the players signed was 108 million, and they have signed them for 92 million. This also includes a few players on loan, hence their rating is 4 out of 5, which is a good rating. The average age of all the players is 25, just above 24, and these are all the players that they have signed in. This has earned them an average score of 3.5. Their net spend is again 22.75, which is not too bad. So it's going to be a 3.5 out of 5, an average score. And their SOFA score impact, last year their SOFA score was 6.93, and this year it's 6.95. That's just about level. So they have gotten an average rating of 3.5 out of 5, which brings their overall rating to 3.6. And I think 3.6 is fairly in line with where they would rank as well when we look at their transfer rankings. And 3.6 earns them an average transfer window. That was Fulham. Let's quickly move on to the next team, who's going to be Ipswich. Ipswich have literally surprised. I mean, they surprised the hell out of me, to be honest. So let's look at their transfer window, because I had not seen this coming. Their primary incomings are Omari Hutchinson as their winger option. They have also signed in Jacob Greaves as a centre back and Jack Clark as a left winger. And additionally, they have also signed in another centre forward. They've signed in 3 defenders, 3 more midfielders, and 1 goalkeeper. That brings them the total number of signings that they have done to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 signings. 11 signings. That's a whole new team that they have built. But this just goes to show as to how much Ipswich are backing Kieran McKenna and how much they want to survive in the Prem. So let's see now about the outgoings. And yeah, they did not have any premier outgoings for raising money purposes. They had a few youngsters who they have let go on a free, some on loan, and some just for very less value. So they have not really earned much from their outgoings. So this is going to be the 24-25 team. And if you look at the depth in the midfield and the defense and the goalkeeping and the forward, this team, I'm just looking at the depth-wise, this team should be competing for in Europe and the Premier League and the Cups. Like they've built a team with that much depth, to be honest. So yeah, it was very surprising to see the way they have sort of planned their transfer window. And even more surprising is their net spend. 125 million euros is what they have spent as a freshly promoted team. And I did not see this coming. And the transfer needs versus actuals, as you can see, they've sort of added more depth than they need, to be honest. Like, I understand injuries is a concern and I understand they want to stay up, but having these many players for Ipswich really was a surprising factor in my opinion. And their transfer ratings, so their need versus want, they needed 9, they brought in 12. That's a 5/5 rating because they covered all the areas that they needed to cover and then some. That's a 5/5. Their value for money, the market value of their players was 118.5 million and their signing value is 127 million, which is roughly near the market value. So that's good enough. So they've gotten a good enough score of 4/5. Their average age of the players that they've brought in is 25, which is also good enough. So they've got an average score of 3.5/5. Their net spend is the place where they sort of like lacked. That's going to be 2/5 because it's 125 million euros that they have spent. It's very unfortunate, but I have to give them a 2/5 considering what I've given the ratings to the other teams as well. And their SofaScore impact, SofaScore did not rate them because they were playing in the last season, because they were playing in the championship. So as of now, the rating is 6.71, which is in the bottom 3 or 4 teams, and considering their league position as well. Hence, they've gotten a SofaScore impact score of average 3, which brings their overall transfer rating to 3.5. This brings them in the tier list to a average score. That's for Ipswich. And this brings us to 10 teams done. So let me know what your thoughts are so far on these 10 teams that we have discussed. And if there's anything that you disagree with, you completely agree with, or you think that the ratings, I should have included a few more things, feel free to drop that in the comments as well down below. Now let's move on to the next team, Leicester. All right. So Leicester is another promoted team this season, and I think they've had a fairly decent transfer window. Let's have a quick look at their incomings. Their incomings include Oliver Skip in their defensive midfield position, El Khanous in their attacking midfield position, and Fatawu in their right winger position. Additionally, they have also signed in Jordan Ayew, Caleb Okoli, and 2 more forwards and 2 more midfielders, which deals were also confirmed. So they've brought in a decent number of players, good number of players for this season, and their primary outgoings have been just Kieran Dewsbury Hall, and this is their squad depth, and it is absolutely insane with the amount of forwards that they have. They've covered all their bases. They have a good squad depth. If anything, I think they're just a bit more bloated in the forward position. I do think that it's fine considering Leicester's perspective. And their transfer highlights include a net spend of 51 million which is fairly decent, good compared to Ipswich, who are at net spend of 125 million. Leicester being 50 million in the negative, it's fine. Expense is 86.8 million, and the total income is 35.4 million, which is great. And in the transfer needs versus actuals, as you can see, they have done much more than what they needed. So I think they have covered all their grounds, all their bases, and their transfer ratings are going to be need versus want. Like I mentioned, they needed 6, they brought 9, so that's going to give them a 5 out of 5 rating. The value for money option, their market value of the players that they signed are 108.3 million, and their signing value is 86.8 million, which is excellent. And also they have brought in a couple of players on loan. That also needs to be taken into account. But overall, that's a very good market value, very good signing value that they have had. So they've gotten a rating of 4.5 out of 5. The average age of the arrivals is 23.4 years, which is bang on, which I was saying, 23 to 24 years is sort of the average age of signing is sort of perfect. So they've gotten a perfect score of 5 out of 5. Their net spend is 51.4 million, which is absolutely fine. And so they've gotten an average rating of 3 out of 5. And their SOFA score impact, this year's present year SOFA score is 6.89, which is so much more better than Ipswich's performance. So I think Leicester are doing really good. So they've got an average rating of 3.5 out of 5, which brings their total transfer ratings for this season transfer window for Leicester City to 4.2, which will definitely be excellent transfer window. So Leicester City, please take the throne in the excellent transfer window position. So that as of now, we've had 3 teams who have had excellent transfer windows, and none of the 3 teams are in the top 6, in the traditional top 6 or top 8. So yeah, Leicester, good job, great job. You've had a great transfer window. Let's move on to the next team, and the next team is going to be Liverpool. So Liverpool's transfer window was really, I think, about non-existent, to be honest. Not that they needed to add too many players, but I do feel that they did not cover all their bases. So let's look at their primary incomings. That includes their goalkeeper. I'm going to go with Georgie for their goalkeeper, and also Federico Chiesa as a left winger from Juventus. They were behind a midfielder, but he snubbed them, unfortunately. And so I think that is where they were lacking as well. Alert. I think Liverpool needed another midfielder to be added. Their primary outgoings include Sepp van der Berg and Fabio Carvalho, both of whom have joined Brentford. And their 24-25 team looks like this. They are stacked everywhere apart from the midfield option. And I do think they needed a holding midfielder. Adding another holding midfielder and a central midfielder would have sort of completed the team in every aspect. And that would have given Arne Slot all the ammunition that he needs to go after the title charge as well. But let's look at the transfer highlights. So their net spend is 5 million in the positive, and also their transfer needs versus actuals. Again, they've brought in a forward and a goalkeeper, but what they needed were 2 midfielders, I think. So let's move on to the transfer ratings. The transfer ratings, need versus want. They needed 3 players, they bought 2 players, lacking midfield depth. So they've got an average score of 3 out of 5. Value for money, the market value of the player signed is 80 million, and they've signed them for 42 million, which is absolutely crazy business. That they've gotten a rating of 5 out of 5. I think Federico Chiesa for 12 million euros is absolutely insane business. But alright, that's Liverpool all the time. Their average age of players brought in is 24.5, which is right about on the money. So that's 4.5 rating out of 5. Net spend is 5 million, which is again, they could have spent more. I think being Liverpool, they could have spent easily 20 million more. So hence they've got an average rating of 3 out of 5. Their SOFA score impact, their SOFA score has not changed. 7.11 last year, 7.11 this year. So yeah, I think they've just maintained their team. Their transfers have not bolstered the team any higher on the SOFA score ratings. So that gives them a total score of 3.5 out of 5, which brings them the overall transfer rating of 3.8. And I think that 3.8 will land them in the good transfer window. So 3.8, and yes, they've had a good transfer window. Let's move on to the next team on our list, and that is going to be none other than Manchester City. Okay, Manchester City, I don't think they need any player. The team is just too complete. Let's look at their incomings first. So they have signed in Savinho and they have brought in Gundogan back from Barcelona on a free. Those are the only 2 signings that they have done this season. They have let go of Alvarez for a crazy amount of money to Atletico Madrid, and they've also let Joao Cancelo go to Saudi, which has also earned them a lot of money, which has made their squad look like this, which is insane the amount of squad depth that they have. If I were to be a bit nitpicky, they could have added another defender and a forward to replace Julio Alvarez. Now let's look at their net spend. For City to have a net spend in positive, and that to 116 million euros, is insane. They're already the best team in Europe. They're already the best team in the Premier League. They're already fighting for all the cups that they can lay their hands on, and their team is fully equipped in every position that you can even imagine of. And for them to then go and earn 116 million euros, and they just spend 25 million and they get 141 million in their income, and a total of 160 million euros is insane window. Talk about doing nothing and having a perfect transfer window. Like, this is insane. Let's look at their transfer ratings. And they needed 3, they brought 2. That's an average score of 3.5 out of 5. The market value of the signing is 65. That is Savinho and Gundogan combined, and they signed them for a combined value of 25 million euros. Like, you can't give them more than a perfect score, to be honest. That's 5 out of 5. The average age is 26.5, which is a little bit on the higher end. They got an average 3.5 out of 5. The net spend is 116 million in the negative, which is they've had more income than expense. That's a 5 out of 5. And their SOFA score has actually increased. Last year, their SOFA score was 7.31, and this year it's 7.37. Again, it's increased, but just margin, it's just about the same. So we're going to keep it at the same 3.5 rating out of 5. Overall transfer market score activity for this season is 4.1, which is, I'm sure, going to land them in the excellent transfer window market, which I have no idea how you can do nothing and land up there. But yeah, there we go. With 4.1, they have landed in the excellent transfer window. And this, again, since we are doing the rating based on what the team needs and what the team got and how much they are spending versus their net spend and all of this, all the other factors combined, I think this is going to be a very true reflection of how the transfer window went for these individual teams as well. So yeah, drop a like, subscribe if you agree with me. So let's move on to the next team, which is going to be our team, because we are, of course, supporters of Manchester United. But even though we are supporters of Manchester United, we're going to look at the transfer window very objectively, maybe a little bit critically as well. Let's look at the incomings of Manchester United. So, Ugarte sign in as a defensive midfield option, deadline day signing, delayed sign in our centre back position, and also Zirkzee sign in our centre forward positions, along with Yoro and Mazraoui, who have been signed in as well. Our outgoings have been Scott McTominay to Napoli for a decent amount, Mason Greenwood to Olympique Marseille for a decent amount, and Wan-Bissaka to West Ham for a decent amount as well, along with Willy Kamwala, Hannibal, Facundo Pellistri were all let go, and Jadon Sancho was let go on loan to Chelsea alone with an obligation. So overall, I think that's good business by Manchester United, and first time over the last few years that we have done sensible business, to be honest. Our team looks like this in our 24-25 season. I do feel that we have covered most grounds, but considering our injury factors and all our players are injury prone, our midfielder right now, Mount, is injured. Collier is just coming up. Our defenders, Malacia is injured. Luke Shaw is injured. So yeah, I think adding another defender in the midst would have just completed it, and a midfield option, because Casemiro has lost his legs. Ideally, I would have seen Casemiro go to be sold and brought in a fresh midfield. Now let's look at our transfer highlights. So we have a net spend of a whopping 111 million euros. We know that this is distributed over a period of time, but still we are way in the negative. 111.5 million euros. Our total expense this season's transfer window has been 214.5 million, and we have sold players worth 103 million, which is great news, to be honest. I never thought that I would see a day where we are selling players worth 100 million as well. So that's good business, to be honest. Needs versus actuals. Like I was saying, adding another midfielder and a defender would have sort of completed the transfer window and made it even better, but that would have also increased the net spend too much. So I can understand why it did not happen. But yeah, overall, it has been a decent transfer window. Let's look at our transfer ratings. So according to our transfer ratings, our need versus want, we needed 7, we bought 5. That's an overall rating of 3.5. Our market value of our players is 240 million euros. These are the players that we have signed in. And we have signed them for a combined value of 214.5 million euros, which is great business. Like, I thought that we overpaid for Lenny Euro, but his market value is also very, very, very high. I do think that overall we have balanced out really well. That gives us a 5 on 5 rating because we have paid less for the players who are valued more. Our average age is 23 years, bang on the 23 to 24 range. So that is 4.5 for us. Our net spend is 111.5 million. Hence we got a rating of 2.5. Our SofaScore impact is right about in the level. 6.98 last year, 6.92 last year, and this season. But since it's lesser, hence I had to deduct that 0.5 and give them 3 out of 5. So our overall score for the transfer window for Manchester United is 3.7. 3.7 will give us right at the top half of the average transfer window rating. If I look at 3.7 out of 5, that's about a 70% rating. That's about a 7 out of 10. And I think that's what majority of our fans would have rated our transfer window as well. Now let's move on to the next team, and that's going to be Newcastle United. Newcastle United, I think, have missed Dan Ashworth like insane. I think there is already talks about Paul Mitchell, them letting go of Paul Mitchell, because we will discuss of the transfers, and the transfers have been very, 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 very surprising in my opinion. Let's look at their incomings first. Lewis Hall in the left back position. They have brought in a goalkeeper, Odysseus, I think, and William Osula as their centre forward, along with permanent transfers for another goalkeeper and a defender, Lloyd Kelly, got confirmed. So these are all their incomings for this season. Their primary outgoings include Elliot Anderson and Yankuba Minte, and all of that, and a few other players have been let go on a free as well. Let's look at their squad depth. Now, in their squad depth, as you can see, there's no need for talking about the depth in the forwards. They're completely jam-packed in that position. Their defenders, jam-packed in that position. Their goalkeepers, overly jam-packed in that position. I do feel that they are lacking in the midfield depth, and they are lacking by 2 midfielders, is my opinion. Now let's look at their transfer highlights. They have spent a net spend of 8 million in the positive, which is good. Okay, I guess. They could have maybe spent 15 or 20 million more. And their income, so their expense has been 68.2 million and their income has been 76.2 million. That's about an 8 million net spend in the positive. Need versus want. I didn't think they needed so many goalkeepers, but they added 2 goalkeepers. I thought that adding a couple of midfielders instead of another defender would have fared well. So overall, I think this is where they're lacking a bit of a midfield depth, and they did not need so many players in the goalkeeping position. So now let's look at the transfer ratings. They need versus want. They're lacking a midfield depth. They needed 4, they bought 5, but 2 of them were goalkeepers. They've gotten an average rating of 3.5 out of 5. In the value for money, in the market value of their signings is 46.2 million. And they have spent 68.2 million on those signings. That's 50% more than the market value. That gives them a very, very, very average score of 3 out of 5. Now the average age of the players that they have signed is also a bit higher, a bit on the higher end, 26.4. Ideally around the 24 should have been ideal. So that also gives them a 3 out of 5 rating. Their net spend is 8 million in the negative. Doesn't really matter. They could have spent 30 million more in my opinion. That gives them a rating of an average 3.5 out of 5. And now if you look at their SofaScore impact, last year they had a SofaScore rating of 7.02, and this year they have a SofaScore rating of 6.94. That's a lot lesser than last year. I couldn't give them a 3 because that's so much more lesser than last year. It's not like 4 out of 5 pointer, 0.04 or 0.05 pointer. It's a 0.08 pointer. That's almost like 1 point difference. So they had to have a rating of 2.5. This gives them an overall transfer rating of 3.1, which means that the transfer did not have much impact. They did not capitalize much on the transfer window. Was it because of Dan Ashworth's move? Was it because Paul Mitchell could not get up to speed on time? So let's see. I think that's really bad news for Newcastle, and that will land them in the bad transfer window ratings. Now we have our second a team for the bad transfer window, and that's in the less than 3.5 rating, and that is Newcastle. Okay, so the next team is going to be Nottingham Forest. Whoa, Forest is another team like Ipswich Town who surprised me a hell of a lot. So let's look at their incomings first. So they have signed in Elliot Anderson in their central midfield position, Milinkovic in the centre back position, Ramon Sosa as their left winger, and additionally they have also loaned in James Ward-Prowse and Alex Moreno, and they have bought in permanent transfers two more centre backs, two more wingers, and one goalkeeper. So they've added a lot of players, which is Nottingham Forest. Who have they let go of? They have let go of Moussa Niakate as the centre back. They have let go of their goalkeeper, and they have also let go of Mangala in their central midfield. And additionally, Matt Turner was loaned out as well, along with 3 centre backs and a midfielder transferred out in total. So yeah, these were their outgoings. Altogether, this is their team. Looking at so many players that they brought in, I thought this was going to be a bloated team, but it is not. I think overall, the only thing I would have had that maybe they could have added another goalkeeper on loan, because that would have given them a bit of a goalkeeper depth. But other than that, I don't think that they are lacking in any from the depth angle in any of the positions. So let's look at their transfer highlights. So their net spend is 18.2 million, which is fine, absolutely fine. So their overall expense is 107.5 million euros, and their income is 89.3 million euros. And they, as you can see in the transfer needs versus actuals, they have covered all their bases. So I think they've had a great transfer window, to be honest. And now let's look at their transfer ratings. In their transfer ratings, need versus want, they have gotten a 5 out of 5 because they needed 7 players. They've brought in 11 players, and they have covered all the positions. Value for money, the market value of their signings was 135 million euros, and they spent 107.5 million euros to get them. That is great business for Nottingham Forest. So that earns them a 5 out of 5. The average age of the players arriving is 24.5 years, which is right about the 24 years mark, which earned them a 4.5 out of a 5 rating. Their net spend is 18.2 million, which is absolutely fine, which gives them a 4.5 out of a 5 rating. And their SofaScore impact, last season they had a 6.85 SofaScore rating, and this season their team has a 7 rating, which is immensely more than last season, 0.15 points more than last season. That's great impact. Talk about a transfer impact for Nottingham Forest, and that is exactly what we're talking about. And that's a 5 out of 5, so which gives them an almost perfect score of 4.8 out of 5. And they take the cake like no other team have. And let's put Nottingham Forest in the excellent transfer window teams. We have only 4 more teams left to go. The next team includes Southampton. And for Southampton, now let's look at their incomings. All right, so the incomings include Taylor Harwood-Bellis as their centre back option. They brought in Ramsdale from Arsenal, and they've brought in Cameron Archer from, I think, Aston Villa as a centre forward. And additionally, they've also signed in Mateus Fernandes and Flynn Downs, along with loan for Leslie Ogochukwu. Their primary outgoings include Carlos Alcaraz in their central midfield and Sekumara in the centre forward. Additionally, 3 defenders, 2 midfielders, and a goalkeeper who's also transferred out. So there were quite a few transfers out, and that's fair enough when you get promoted from the Championship to the Premier League. You will see kind of a squad overall because you need to match the levels of the Premier League. Let's look at the 24-25 team, and they are basically covered in every possible squad depth that you can think of. I almost think that they have more players than they need, especially in the forward position. So their squad depth looks fine, if at all, a bit more bloated than I would have liked for them to have. All right, so their transfer highlights include a net spend of 75.5 million euros. So the expense is 117.15 million euros, and the income is 41.5 million euros. And in their transfer needs versus actual, as you can see, they have filled in a lot in their positions. They've added in 5 forwards, 5 midfielders, 5 defenders, and like 1 goalkeeper, and that's crazy, the amount of players that they have signed this season. Let's see about the transfer ratings. In their transfer ratings, the need versus want, they needed 8. They bought in 16 players, which is a bit of a bloated squad depth, which is why I've given them a bit of a lower score, because that's really double than what they needed. So yeah, that is why they've received a 3 out of 5 rating. The value for money, the market value of their signings are 147.9 million euros, and they've signed them for 117.15 million euros, which is much lesser than their market value, which is absolutely great. 5 out of 5. Their average age of the arrivals is 24.6, years of age, which is great, right about the 24 years mark, and they get a 4.5 out of 5, which is good. Their net spend is 75.56 million euros, which is okay, which is fine. I do think that coming up from the promotion, you need to invest in the team, otherwise you'll go straight back down. If you have to give yourself a chance, you need to bet on the first season after being promoted. That's fair enough. So I've given them a 3 out of 5, and their SofaScore impact, Southampton's performance has been really bad. 6.76 is their SofaScore this season. Since they are in the bottom lower, almost I think they're 19th in the table right now or something. So yeah, that's why their SofaScore impact is 2.5, because their transfers, they've brought in too many players, but they are not out of the danger zone yet. That's why they've got a rating of 2.5, which brings their overall transfer rating of 3.6. So let's see where that lands them. That's an average. So right about average, right about mid-average is where Southampton lies. The next team is going to be Spurs. Really surprised me in a negative way. This is Ange's second season. I thought he would get more of a backing than what he got in this transfer window. So let's look at their incomings. Their incomings include Dominic Solanke, which is great. They have also signed in Archie Gray in their midfield position, young midfielder, and they've also brought in Wilson Odber, I think, as their left winger option, along with Lucas as a young midfielder. Their outgoings included Oliver Skip and Emerson Royal, along with defender Joe Rodon and midfielder Lo Celso, and also transferred out 2 more defenders, 1 midfielder and 1 winger. So they did transfer out a lot of players. The 24-25 team looks like this, which honestly, I feel Ipswich Town has more depth than Spurs right now. I have no idea how Ange is going to manage it. They really needed another defender and another midfielder. I would say they needed 2 more midfielders, to be honest, and that is how they would have added more depth to the squad. But yeah, I'm not really impressed with the depth of the squad there. And even then, their net spend is 89.55 million. They have spent 144.85 million, and their income is 55.3 million. That's insane. To think that you have a net spend of close to 90 million euros and you don't bring in the players that you were supposed to bring in, I don't think that's great business by Spurs. But yeah, let's see about their transfer ratings now. I'm scared for Tottenham Hotspurs right now. Alright, so their need versus want. They needed 5, they bought 4, lacking midfield depth. I've given them a 4 out of 5. The value of the players that they have signed in the market value is 78 million euros, and they have signed them for a whopping 144 million euros. It's absolutely insane to think as well that you will buy the players at double the market value, and which gives them a score of 2 out of 5. Alright, so the next category is average age, 20.3 years. They've signed in very, very young players right now. They're going to get a 3 out of 5. Their net spend is 89.55 million euros. That's going to be 3 out of 5 average, basically. And their SofaScore impact. Previous year, their SofaScore was 7.04. Present year, it's 7.09. I've been generous to give them a rating of 4 out of 5. Would have been an easily average 3.5 out of 5. But I've gone with a 4, which has been a total overall rating of 3.2 for Tottenham. And this ranks them in the bad transfer window category. Let's move on to the next team, and the next team is going to be West Ham United. Now, I was very impressed by the business of West Ham, but when I come to ratings, like Nottingham Forest takes the cake. Like, who would have guessed? Alright, so let's look at the incomings. Their incomings include Max Kilman, centre back from Wolves, Somerville, left winger from Leeds, Nicholas Fulcrum from Dortmund. Great signing, great signing. They've also signed in Luis Guillem as their right winger and Wan Bissaka from Manchester United as their right back. Additionally, they've also permanently signed in Rodriguez and loaned in Carlos Soler and Jean-Claude Todibo. I think Todibo is on a loan with an obligation, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, that's great business. Great business by West Ham. They have covered, I think, every ground they could possibly have. And I think they're making good use of the Declan Rice money that they got in last season. They have also let go of Flynn Downs and Said Benrahma, and additionally 3 other defenders and 2 goalkeepers were transferred out, but not for too much amount of sum. So the 24-25 team looks like this, which I think is a very decent team. They have gotten good depth everywhere. I think the only thing I would have maybe added another defender. Yeah, I think they have backed Lopetegui really well this season. And let's look at the transfer highlights. They have a net spend of close to 100 million, wherein they have spent 145 million and gotten an income of 44.75 million. And as you can see in the transfer needs versus actuals, they have met all their criteria. So let's look at the needs versus want. They needed 6. They brought in 10. So that's a 5 out of 5 rating. The value for money in their market value of the players that they have signed, the market value is 187 million almost, and they have signed them for 144 million, which is thumbs up, 5 out of 5. Average age is a little bit on the higher end, to 25.6 years. So yeah, that has landed them a score of 3.5 out of 5. The net spend is 99.65 million euros, which has given them a score of 2.5 because they are in the red. So yeah, that is the only place that they've gone a little bit less in the ratings. And the SofaScore impact, last season, their SofaScore was 6.92. This season, right now, it's 6.78. That's not a really good start. Hence, they've landed with a score of 2 out of 5, which gives them the overall rating of 3.6 out of 5. And let's see where that lands them. All right, so West Ham 3.6 lands on the average transfer window list. Another reason why they have received a little bit of a less rating in the SofaScore impact was because their SofaScore actually reduced from last year, from 6.92 to 6.78. Now we can move on to our final team, which is Wolves. If you have made it so far in the video, this video deserves a like and a subscribe. So please hit that button right now, and I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section as well. All right, so let's talk about Wolves. Wolves overall, I think, had a decent transfer window. Let's look at their incomings. Firstly, they've signed in Andre in the defensive midfield position. They've signed in Rodrigo Gomez in the right midfield option, and they've signed in Sam Johnstone as their goalkeeper. And also, they have signed in on permanent transfer one more midfielder, 2 more defenders, and they've also loaned in Strand Larsen and Carlos Forbes as 2 players. Their primary outgoings include obviously Pedro Neto to Chelsea and Max Kilman to West Ham, and that have also given them a lot of money to spend. This transfer window, they've covered all their bases. They've had a lot of depth in the forwards. They have a lot of depth in their midfield, a lot of depth in their goalkeeping option, a lot of depth in their defensive option. Now let's look at their transfer highlights. All right. So their income from their transfers was 112.5 million, but they've only spent 74 million, which gives them a positive spend of 38 million, which is absolutely crazy. And it's very, very, very good business. Let's look at their transfer ratings. Their transfer ratings include need versus want. They needed 6, they bought 8, great, 5 out of 5. Value for money, market value of signings 93 million. They have signed them for 74 million. Absolutely great business, 4.5 out of 5. Average age of the arrivals 22 years, close to 23, so they get an average rating of 3.5 out of 5. Net spend is in the positive, 38.1 million. And the SofaScore impact, last year their SofaScore was 6.89, right now it's 6.68. So which means that the transfers have not really translated into a good team performance this season so far. Hence, their SofaScore impact rating is only 2 out of 5, which gives them an overall score of 4 out of 5, which is again a very big thumbs up from my end. And let's look at where they will rank. And Wolves with a rating of 4 will land in a good transfer window. That's it. That's the transfer window rankings wrapped up. I think this reflects fairly well on the way we have structured this particular breakdown, in-depth analysis. All of these ratings takes into account the individual team's needs and how they were able to solve those needs, and also in comparison with their performance and their team ratings in the previous year and compared to this year as of this season. Our rating overall, all of this is for fun. I try to give a bit more depth to the analysis of transfers, because when we look at transfers, it's a very two-dimensional approach. How many players we have gotten and how many players we have sold. But I try to branch it out in a way that we are able to look at it from a much more wider approach, and not just look at the transfer business from a business perspective, but also from the angle of the team's performance and how those transfers affected those individual teams as well. I feel that this kind of an in-depth analysis is something that is lacking in YouTube right now, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, please do like, share, and subscribe with your friends, family, and come join me in the chat and in the comments for football discussions, because this is Streamatrix. We discuss everything football. We don't hide away from any topic, and we don't hide away from disagreeing as well. If you disagree with me, feel free to put it down in the comments. Put in your rankings as well. Would love to hear from you, and I will respond to every comment that we get and I'll see you in the next one with more football content upcoming.